like you know how this goes. Fumble a bag, now I will not fumble a bag. Act like you know how this goes.
Yo, what's going on? We are live, late night live stream, teaching the toolkit. Thanks everybody for joining. It's me, Jake, here, head of community at Spatial, and we have a special guest today. Believe it or not, that is not Hawa, who's normally on the stream. We got Metaverse Josh in the house. What's going on, Josh? Thanks
Hey,
for
what's
being
going on,
here.
everybody? Thanks.
Got here in his time machine in his DeLorean. So
Yeah,
made a
it felt like
special trip.
it's a very appropriate background for what we're going to be teaching today, which is to build a hoverboard in Spatial. One of my favorite things since I just learned how to do it. So I'm happy to share.
Now you're going to teach us.
Yeah. So
there you go.
If you're new to at least to my stream, that's typically what I do. I learn how to do something and then I show everyone else how to do it. And so yeah, today we're going to be showing everybody. Actually, sort of how to do two things. You know, we talked about that a minute ago, but we're going to be showing you sort of how to build a vehicle because it's essentially what a hoverboard is, and then we're going to teach you how to modify what is essentially a basic vehicle at that point into a rideable hoverboard. So,
all right, that sounds awesome. I'm ready to get my hoverboard on. This is like honestly, I think one of the things that like I know everyone at Spatial has been like, you know, as a company level has been like dreaming of for forever. Like Anand, like one of our co-founder CEO, so like wanted hoverboard and Spatial for forever. Like we even at the beginning of the year we dropped kind of like a teaser for Spatial of like what it'll look like later this year, and it was all just like racing a hoverboard around like a city, and that's been like. And last year we had this this kind of smaller version of Spatial called Insta Spatial. It was like, how can you like load up an NFT gallery like in a mobile browser like super fast, and it actually had like a button you can press and like go on a hoverboard and go around like your virtual gallery on a hoverboard. So there's just been this thing at Spatial of just like really wanting that Back to the Future vibe, and now like you were one of the first, if not the first, to like actually build it and make it like working in Spatial. Like you, there was Cybernerd Baby, there was like others, and I know you guys like collab and chat all the time, so it's like awesome to like actually make that a reality. And now, so hopefully everyone watching, and this is going to be recorded and it'll be up on our YouTube and stuff like that too. People will be able to like, now everyone can build a hoverboard, and we'll just be, I think your tweet on Twitter was like, after tonight there's just going to be hoverboards everywhere.
everywhere.
The Buzz Lightyear meme. So I am excited. So
yeah,
let's just jump into it.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to go ahead and get my Unity project pulled up here. So a few things that you want to do to get started. First of all, you want to have a hoverboard model, which this one I grabbed from Sketchfab. I'm going to be using the classic Mattel hoverboard model, but you can grab pretty much anything, skateboard deck, whatever, you know, without wheels, and turn it into a hoverboard if you'd like. From there, we're going to be following the basic vehicle guide. And Jake, if you want to help me out, I actually don't have the guide up with me. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to just start with the basic vehicle guide, if you will, and I'll show the shortcut that I showed you earlier for those that, you know, don't necessarily want to go through it the hard way. So the first thing you want to do, you know, if this was a car or a truck or anything else that you were starting with, you want to start with a model. I like to create just a basic game object to start off with, so I have something that I can apply all of my vehicle settings too without the model in case I want to replace it, and we'll talk about that later. So the first thing I'm going to do is inside of my project here. Actually, you know what? Let me back up a little bit. I'm just assuming everybody kind of has Unity installed at this point. I guess since you guys had already kind of taught that in a previous.
Yeah, we've gone through that. So there's definitely like an assumption here that like everyone's got Unity set up. You're using 2021.3.21. Everyone's grab the starter template. So if you go to docs.spatial.io, I'll put that in the bottom here. If you go to docs.spatial.io or spatial.io/docs, get the starter template. That's got everything you need, all the example templates, even a sample vehicle that I think you'll show a little bit later, and sample scenes, everything you need to get started. I also put if you're on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, I put a link in the chat for a Sketchfab model as well for the hoverboard, so you can get that from Sketchfab, and then also the link to the vehicle documentation. Yeah, right there. There you go.
Right, I just want to make sure I had that handy there.
Yeah, that'll walk you through. Yeah, just double check all the different properties and stuff that we're going to go through setting up. But yeah, like you said, a hoverboard, surprisingly, even though it doesn't have wheels, like visually, not too different from a regular car.
So I'm going to go ahead and follow the vehicle guide, and I have it here, so I'll go back and forth so I can make sure I follow all these steps. If you want to follow along at home, just do the same thing I'm doing here, which would be for this vehicle, and I will show you where you need to make modifications in order to make your hoverboard. So first thing we're going to do with step one, change the layer to vehicles. I'm going to go back to my Unity project here. So I've made a hoverboard, an empty object. I've got it highlighted here. I'm going to change the default layer to vehicles. And I'm going to just go ahead and start with that. That's going to give me sort of an empty object that I can start with, that I can apply any of the um, configuration of the vehicle that I'll show you later through the rigid body and other components that I can keep separate from the model in case I want to replace it. And so in this case, we certainly will. Now from here, the next step is to add the rigid body component. So we're going to hit add component with the hoverboard empty object selected. Type in rigid body here. And these are the default values here. We'll leave that for now. We got to make sure that we're going to add the mass of the vehicle. Now, this is important because for a normal vehicle, it would be heavy, right? But for a hoverboard, I just sort of play around with these values a little bit. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my prefab that I already have made right here, and I'm going to bring it in so I can sort of confirm some of these values from what I know works. And so it looks like I just left the default cart values in there from earlier for now. So if that seems to work, we'll just leave that. And so in here for now, we can put 1500, and for, let's see, the other two values were drag and angular drag. Looks like I left that at 0.2 for each.
And that mass is in kilograms too for people who are wondering out there.
I accidentally launched something after my mouse fell on the floor there. Sorry.
Oh, no.
All right, so yeah, let's go back to Unity here. So now I've got my empty hoverboard object here. I've got my rigid body component, a couple things configured here. I'm going to change a couple other values. I'm pretty sure that we modified here. Yeah, let me go and make sure all that matches. I think we're good there. So yeah, and you can play around with some of this. Like I said, now let me sort of give you an example though why I left this heavy. I tried to make it at one point very realistic, and I said, hoverboard is not going to be that heavy, right? I'm just going to make it a few pounds or something. And you'll quickly learn that, at least in Unity, there's a thing that it tries to emulate, which is physics. And if you're standing on something as a human, which it assumes that, maybe you're 100 pounds or 200 pounds or something like that, and you're standing on this object that's only a few pounds, you're just going to fall right over. And that's sort of what happened. and especially if you make the rigid body and everything, sort of match your hoverboard. And so I left this sort of heavy to make sure that I did not fall over from a video, and I would recommend that you do the same. And so right now you're not going to see much. Again, this is just an empty game object here. I'm going to continue working with it though. So we're going to place this empty game object for the driver position, and this is something we're going to change later because with a vehicle at least, you're going to be sitting in it, and so it sort of plays that sitting animation. And we'll talk about this later. But we modify this later in the build because we're going to replace that sitting pose with a standing animation, so it looks like he's actually surfing on the board there. And you can get that for free from Mixamo if you want to put that in the chat for me,
Yeah, I
Jake,
gotcha.
since that's also a nice free resource for everybody to use.
I love Mixamo. That's honestly like one of my favorite things. Something surprisingly like a lot of people don't know about, but
Right.
it's a free Adobe tool for animations. So
Well, that's why I like to mention it here. So, um, if this is your first time hearing about it, look, you're going to be really excited to see some of this stuff. All right, and we're not talking about custom emotes tonight. Well, I guess we'll have to sort of in order to
we can touch on
get
it.
this
Yeah.
guy standing on it. But once you unlock that for people, they'll go crazy. So that's a whole nother
hmm
night. All
hmm
right, so for this, we're going to make this. It's again, we'll just call it the seat, um, spot for now or whatever. But again, he's going to be standing up when we get done with it. This empty spot, as long as it is, I think, a child of this. Hard to see all this stuff. I'm sorry. I got to turn on some. See, we still need, what is it? A bots collider in order to see all that. There we go. So we got to add a mesh or bots collider. I'm going to add a box one now since we actually don't have any kind of. Actually, you know what? I think this assumes that we have the car in there already, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. So box collider, you can put a box collider. You can use a mesh collider or a box collider. Either one. Box
That's okay.
colliders. If for something like this, probably a box collider is a little bit better.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and put the model in there at this point, so that way we can have a visual of where to add the collider. I do use the box collider where I can, and so this is a decent example of how to do that. So I'm actually going to add that as a child of my. Oops, Control Z that out of there. I'm going to add it as a child of my hoverboard object there. I'm going to rename that to box collider, and then we're going to add the box collider component. From here, if you notice inside of the box collider component here, there's a small button. If you hit this, it'll actually let you edit this box. And so now if you'll spin around the object a tad, you can kind of see where the box is and you can edit, the size and shape of that box. Now's a good time to go ahead and do that. At least in this case, it doesn't necessarily have to be, um, perfect or anything like that. It's enough to make sure that, if you run into things that it sort of matches what you're looking at. Sorry, I'm having a hard time. This
That's okay.
like this 3D sometimes gets me. It's hard to see exactly where these points are, but you got to be really careful.
Yeah.
There
Sometimes
we
going into like the isometric view, like for that helps too.
Sure. Good enough for government work, right? There we go. So that's what we used to say when I was enlisting. All right. Now we've got the box collider added. I'm going to move on to the next. We've got our driver's seat position, which I didn't really move much, but again, we're going to move that later anyway, so I'm just going to skip that for now. Got our box collider, add center of mass. So again, for a hoverboard, it's not too terribly important that it's, in a certain spot or anything like that. I just put it in the center. So I'm going to create another empty game object. I'm going to call it center of mass. And if I'm going too fast for anybody, don't worry. I got a video that shows you how to do all of this on vehicles if you need it. You can always go there for a recap. I'm just going to put the center of mass right there in the center of the board. Make sure that it's actually center so I don't fall over. There we go. Okay. Next. Now here's the fun part. Because we're not actually making wheels, it is a hoverboard after all. We get to make the wheel colliders. They can kind of be whatever you want as long as they're a decent size for riding around on a hoverboard. The part where you actually have to match this up with real wheels, that's actually kind of difficult for some people. It's going to be super easy for us this time. Uh, so we do need to make our wheel colliders, and so what we'll do, I'm actually just going to make another empty game object. I'm going to call it wheel colliders. And again, for a hoverboard, this doesn't necessarily have to be anything of a certain shape or size. I'll give you an example of what I'm going to do here, and you can make yours, whatever size or that you feel comfortable with. And so here I'm going to create 4 empty game objects. Now that I've done that, and you'll just want to name these in such a way that you know what's front left, front right, and then rear left and rear right. So I usually just do something simple, like FL for front light left. I'm sorry, collider, and the same for the rest. Now that I have these named, they're all in the same place. So what I want to do is I actually want to sort of move these into the general sort of area that they would be if they were, wheels. And so for the front left, um, I want this object about here, I guess. Let's see. Right. I'm actually gonna delete the left and I'm sorry, the right on both sides because I found that was actually easier to copy them and just move them over so I can make sure they're aligned right. I think I'm just gonna do that for the back as well. Start over. And now I know that's aligned right. The left side.
And just to, I saw there's a question in that chat too. So Josh
Sure,
is
I'm
working
listening.
off of the starter template, the spatial starter template versus you can do this. You can do this now in a totally blank scene in Unity, and then bring it over to the spatial toolkit starter template. But you'll definitely need the starter template, which you can get from docs.spatial.io, because that's going to allow you or Josh, it's everyone, to publish this hoverboard to spatial, and also contains all the components that you need, like the animation components and the we'll be using some visual script nodes as well for the vehicle. So you'll need all that. That's in the starter template. So definitely recommend getting that if you're kind of following us along live.
Yeah, and so I didn't, show where to go download all of that. Of course, all I did was just load a blank scene, but I do have all the, spatial SDK stuff in here. So this is something you want to start out with. You don't want to try to add this later or something, right? And so I didn't show how to do that. Again, I was just assuming here that everybody kind of was that far already, but
No, we're good.
excuse me.
We're good.
So now I've got these collider objects in here, and I actually want to add the wheel collider components now. And so you just want to search for that after you add the component button. Wheel collider is what I want here, and you just want to do that times 4. Okay. Now if I go up to, actually, you know what? I've completely uh, added those in the wrong direction. So the way that I'm going to have to fix that is by moving my bots collider and my model. That's going to confuse a lot of people, Jake.
Mm.
I think. So, my hoverboard is facing the wrong way. So a lot of people probably won't have to deal with that problem. Of course, if they do, then I guess I just showed them how to fix that. One thing you'll want to do once you get to this point is make sure when you click that your top level object here, that the model of your hoverboard is facing the right direction. You can verify that by looking at the blue arrow here. and that your wheel colliders are facing in the right direction. So you see that they don't look pretty, they don't look exactly right, but we can change that now that we sort of have everything set up, right? And so,
Yeah, and that's the Z forward direction. And also, I think also good to make sure that you're working with the pivot point and the local a local axis there in the top. Yeah, so you're on
right,
pivot, and then the one next to that is on the local coordinates. Yeah,
right,
so you're
okay.
so you're good.
So at least on my tutorial video, I showed a little bit about that, and that's a good thing to point out. Gave me a huge headache when first trying to learn how to do all of this. So yeah, make sure when you're dealing with these wheel colliders that you have your pivot point selected, and make sure you're modifying all this correctly. And so if you're following along at home and you're making all this from scratch, and you're kind of at this point, I'm looking at my wheels here. I'm not really happy with where they're positioned, but at least I know, what's what, and they're in the right spaces. So in order for me to modify this, I could simply, you make sure you're at the top level so that you can see all of the pieces of your rigid body and the wheels, and then you can sort of modify where some of this stuff is. So now the important thing to note is that since it's not a real vehicle, it's not so important that it's exactly accurate where it is, because none of this is going to be visual. I just want to make sure that my vehicle actually drives in a way that it'll be able to stand up and not fall over. And so one of the things that I found is that having the wheels sort of out a little bit more than they should be if they were real wheels helps sort of ground your character on this thing while you're driving it, and make sure you don't fall over left and right. And so I'd still recommend leaving them sort of where they are here, but you may want to spread them out a tad. So at least for the front ones, I'm going to move them up just a tad, and I want to move them up exactly the same amount. So what I'm going to do is grab the Z coordinates from that one and just paste it into the other um, front wheel there. And so if we go to the top, you'll notice that my front wheels, actually they don't match yet, so I must have grabbed the wrong one. The front right, front left, they are in the same. Yeah, so let's undo what I did there. I think I'm good now. Nope. Bear with me, Jake. I'm trying to control the Z like a pro. There we
No,
go.
you're good. Yeah.
All right. So now I want to make sure that I move both the front and, let's see. So yeah, I must have mislabeled my colliders here like a dummy. That's what I've done. So let's fix this real quick. That's a front left. That's not a back left. That's actually a.
That looks like the front left. That one? Is that front right?
That is a front left. So I've got everything all out of whack. Let's fix that real quick. That's the front right one. Everybody following along at home says, "Look at Josh, he's a pro."
He knows his lefts and
All right.
rights. This is.
Let's see. So those are just backwards. So I'll just rename those. Let's see. I think that happened from when I had to rotate some of this stuff. There's a little craziness going on. So that's the back right. Okay.
Back right. Yeah, that looks good.
So now that I've got everything labeled correctly, I can actually just select both of those at the same time, move those forward, select both of those, and move those slightly back.
Yeah,
That's
so you're
going to
kind of
give
like
me,
building like almost like a little off-road vehicle, right? Like in terms of like where
yeah,
the wheels are positioned. You got like this wide base, and they're kind of close together, like front to back. But then I think we'll also get into like maybe like the suspension a little bit too. So it gives you that like as you're moving, like say like over like hills and stuff, it kind of gives like that almost like hoverboard kind of vibe of how it moves
correct.
around.
That's exactly what gives us that kind of feel. And so when you make these wheels kind of big, I know it kind of looks goofy here, but when you get all of this right, it sort of drives, like you said, just like a vehicle would, where you got that suspension and all, and you get this real feel of that. It looks and feels like it's hovering, instead of just kind of zooming, like what it would feel like if you just jumped on top of an object that had an animator, right? And that's what we've been doing in the past. this is going to feel a little bit more like that drivable
Yeah.
object that we're all looking for. And so now, I've got at least this sort of, the skeleton of this thing sort of built. And then I'm going to go back to my instructions here. So, of course, we have to build a couple interactables. That's the next step. So these, at least in the example, it looks like the first interactable was created as um, a child object of the top level object. So we could just right click spatial and interactable. And that's going to give us that button at least. I'm going to rename this one to drive for now. And then I want to say I don't think it matters, but I've just been trying to sort of um, follow the same as the example, and I think it was a child of the model that the exit was. But I really do think that you can just put it anywhere. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, it just has to be, as long as it's a child of the vehicle. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where it is.
Okay, so I'm just gonna make another one.
Basically,
Just
yeah.
yeah,
So that, yeah, they can be anywhere. Right, like as long as you're with a child of the vehicle, basically everything below that's kind of like organization, like keeping your wheel colliders organized and other things like that. It's like up to you how you want to keep that organized. um, and the purpose of the interactable. So we haven't gotten into this really yet on like the live stream. We do have the we actually haven't done a tutorial video on it yet on the spatial channel. But for those who haven't used the interactables or don't know what that is, so it's basically it's a button, allows you to interact with stuff, right? So you can walk up to an object, and if you're on the desktop web, you can hit the F key. If you're on mobile, you can just tap on it on screen. In VR, you should be able to like point and click on it as well, and it allows you to do stuff like trigger things. So like it's like pressing a button, on a dashboard, and it can do stuff. And in this case, we're adding the interactable, so it's kind of like hitting like the A key in like Grand Theft Auto when you walk up to a vehicle, and this is what's gonna trigger the whole getting in the vehicle and taking over control of the vehicle kind of flow. So
right.
that's what we're adding. And we need one for both getting in the vehicle, and then when you're in the vehicle, you need technically a different one that you click on to get out of the vehicle. So that's why we're adding two here.
Right. Now another thing that I'm gonna do, because this is just what you would do if you were building any vehicle here. You're gonna want to go to the examples inside of the Spatial SDK. We're gonna go into the Space Golf Course Driving folder, into the Cart folder, and then we're gonna grab the golf cart example. I like to just go ahead and put it into the scene so that I got quick access to it. You don't necessarily need it once you're done, so you could just kind of move it, put it where you want. But having quick access to the parts of this example are going to help you out. So now that I've got it in the scene here, I'm going to select the golf cart. Now I have access to all the variables and all of the other pieces of the vehicle. And so I believe, at least in this step, if I'm not mistaken, the next step was to um, grab the variables component. Well, I guess we're going to add it to ours, and then we grab the variables from it. And so I'm going to go back to the top level of my hoverboard. I'm going to add a component, call it variables. We don't have any yet. That's fine. And I'm pretty sure that's what it says to do, is just to go to the example and copy its component. So we're just going to do that. So I'm going to go back to the golf cart here. At the variables component, you'll see there are 3 dots here. Click that. And then you can do a copy component here. Go back to your hoverboard, go to your variables here, click the 3 dots there on the right, and then you can hit paste component values, and that'll give you all of the values from the example right there on your hoverboard. So if you're here, I'm pretty sure, let me make sure. At this point, now you're going to be trying to sync up all of the pieces of your own unique vehicle and pasting that over the example pieces. So here we're going to match up a few things. On our hoverboard, actually, I'm going to get rid of the cart for now, since I don't need it. I'll put it back if I need it again. I probably will, but for now, I'm just gonna
Spoiler alert,
grab.
he will need
Yeah,
it.
I will. I'm just getting it out of the way so I don't confuse myself or anybody else.
Yeah.
And so for here, I'm just going to grab my wheel colliders and all the rest of the pieces that I have in this example, and I'm just going to replace them. And so I've got my seat spot. I've got my. I'm just going to go ahead and drag that over here. It says it's missing. And that's an easy way to know. That's another reason why I got rid of it. And so you got the start interactable and the stop. You'll see I made mine called drive and exit, and so I'm just going to replace those. So they're no longer missing. Now I've got wheel colliders, says they're also missing. And so you'll see I got my front, you know what? I completely got rid of the example order, so now I don't know what the order is. If I remember correctly, it was front left, front right, back right. So I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna know if it's wrong.
And
Let's
it's
see.
good to, and you want to make sure when you're doing this too that
Mhm.
you do it the front wheels and then the last two are the back wheels, because
Right,
that next variable you have the back wheels variable, and we're specifying the bottom two. I mean, you can change which ones are checked there, but we
right.
check the bottom two just so we know which are the front, which are the back.
Yeah, it's super important to make sure these are right. If you don't do this right, you're gonna have a bad time. And so since I deleted my example, um, as a beginner, I shouldn't have done that, but I've done this enough times and now I'm pretty sure that's the order. But now here's what's also important. Just like Jake said, make sure that your back wheels are the ones that are checked, and then make sure that however you do this, if you were setting up a regular vehicle or hoverboard or whatever, just make sure that the order of your vehicles again, or sorry, your wheels again line up exactly just like this. Now, here's the thing: on a real vehicle, we would have real wheel meshes that we would have to line up and make sure that it all works well with the wheel colliders and all. Here's the fun part about a hoverboard: we don't have to deal with that, but you still have to, in order to not have to modify this script any, right? We're just going to plug in some fake ones. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make some child objects of my model here. You know, they don't exist, but I'm just going to create some empty ones, and we're just going to call them exactly like we did the others, except it's not a collider. We're just not going to put that. So I'm going to do front right. Um, let's see. You know, I can just copy them and paste them.
You can Command D, Control D, duplicate.
Yeah, we could do that too. Let's see. Set BL right, back left, and back right.
And for
Now,
these,
also
I
this fun
also
part.
I was just
Go
saying for
ahead.
these also I try and make sure they're in the same order as my colliders, like when I put them in the variables. Um,
Oh, absolutely right. So I'm going to go back to there, and we're just going to put them in the exact same order that we have here. So it's going to be my front left, my front right. This really matters if it's visual, but since it's not here, it won't matter if it's funky looking or not. It's going to work 'cause we're not using them. But it's going to make our script work, right? If you don't actually plug these in here, the script's not going to work right. So and if you're missing any of these things, you could potentially have a vehicle that doesn't work. So you want to make sure that you do all of this correctly. And so now I've got. See, this is. I think I don't know if this camera target piece is in the instructions. I mentioned this in my tutorial. I think it's
oh,
in the example.
did I skip that? I put together the doc, so maybe I missed that, but that's
Yeah,
what we're
it's
going to
all
do right
good.
now.
I saw, I went through all of this, very meticulously, and I think the camera object is definitely in the example. I
Yeah.
don't think it's in the doc here, but we're going to go ahead and make it. And here's the way that I sort of playing around with this understood it. So the camera object is when you jump into a vehicle and you spin the camera around however you want. This is where it's going to center what the camera is looking at. And so on the example, it sort of puts the camera in front of the car, which is great because the example golf cart is kind of high, and so for a camera, if you're trying to drive it, if it's too low, it doesn't, you can't see the road well. And so in some cases that may be what you want. But also, I found that if you've got a low riding vehicle, you may want to lower that a little bit more. In some cases, if you want to take pictures with your vehicle, or in this case, a hoverboard, you may want to move that more to the center of where your character is so that you'll get more of that person in the center of the shot. So that's just a little bit more of what I kind of found out there. And so, at least on the hoverboard, I'm kind of assuming I want to take a picture of myself, while I'm, driving it around or whatever. There's nothing in the way for me to not be able to see. So I'm just going to put it in the center of where I would be standing if I was riding on it. So I'm going to create another empty underneath my hoverboard, and I'm just going to call it camera object. Sure I spelled that right, yeah. And so I'm going to go back to the hoverboard. I'm going to replace that in there with this new one that I made, and also my center of mass. It looks like that I forgot to mention there. And then, so the last piece is the sounds. I did forget to add the sounds onto my object, so I'm going to add that back to my scene for just a minute. Just like Jake said, I forgot it. I'm going to copy it and just add that to my hoverboard. Now that's actually a cheat that I learned for vehicles, is that you could really just take the sounds from the golf cart and put it on yours, and then later, if you wanted to get a more realistic sound, like if you had a hoverboard sound or something, or whatever your vehicle is, and you wanted to replace these, I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. So I'm going to get rid of the golf cart again, because again, I don't need it. Now you'll see that I got the sounds built into my own hoverboard. And so even though they say they're missing now, I can just go into here and just replace them, just as they were. So I'm going to use the built-in stuff for now again, so I don't have to go through any additional steps here. But if you want to replace any of these sounds, it really is as simple as going to the sound object itself. You can click in here and you can see how it just references an MP3 file or a WAV file or something like that. So if you add your own sound files into any of these directories, your own asset folder or whatnot, you can go into the sound objects here and you can replace with your own custom MP3 or your own custom WAV. You can just put that there and it'll play that sound instead. You can also mess with some of these sound options here. You can make it louder. You can use spatial blend or turn that off, whatever you want, but that's completely up to you and cosmetics. So I'm just going to leave what's there for now again. And so I think, Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, but I got a whole vehicle built here. That should be drivable.
I think so. I was wondering, like, I was just thinking about this. Does a hoverboard have, like, does it have sound? Like, I was like, so I brought up the Back to the Future scene, and I'm like, does this
I think
actually?
it does.
Hey, stop.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, it had a little bit of that. Yeah.
Like a little whoosh.
Yeah, it's got a little whoosh, especially when they were doing the kicking, so there's a little bit. That's something I hadn't worked out yet, but I felt like it was definitely there.
Yeah. Anyway, we could just sit here and watch this whole scene, but I was just like, does the hoverboard have sound? Anyway.
So and here's the other thing that I try to see. No, I'm not even done yet. This is not drivable. I don't even have a script on here or nothing. I still need my example again and all kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was focused on bringing out that video. So when you said, "Is it drivable?" No, yeah, we're still.
No, it's certainly not.
Yeah, do you have the center of mass on there? I noticed that was missing before.
I do. I think
in the script. Yeah. Okay. You added it there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got everything on here, and I'm so spoiled because, like, remember when I showed you that shortcut? I forgot that I really didn't have to do all this when I built my hoverboard. I took the shortcut, but I'm just showing people anyway.
No, that's good.
So the shortcut, the people are gonna be mad after we get done with all this, and they go, wait a minute, because I could have just done this. But
well, it's good. It's good to know how the different components work, especially like if you want to go and build like your own vehicle and stuff too. It's
Right.
super helpful. The only difference between a hoverboard and like any other vehicle is just basically we're just not showing the wheel meshes. Like there's no wheel meshes to visually show.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it's just a car that you stand on, basically. And then the other difference being is that we're going to add the animation so you're standing versus sitting.
Right. So I'm just going to throw my example back in there since I still need it. And I think the next part was we actually need to copy the script. So I'll make sure I'm not skipping anything here. So we got that part, set the variables, add a script machine. So I think
The last piece was did you go through the variables in terms of the max drive?
I didn't edit it. I just left, I guess, what the example had. I mean, we can go over that real quick if you want. These are some things you can change inside of. I'm sorry, let me go back to my hoverboard so I know exactly what we've gone over so far. You can edit some of these, like the max drive. I found that, like, it's not just like a infinite number. You can just keep increasing and it'll go faster. It'll spin those wheels a little faster, but I don't think it'll make your car go any faster. There's
Well,
some torque
there's
that you can add
yeah.
to it, though.
Well, the max drive is like the max torque basically in Newton meter. So the only things to change here are max drive, max the brake force, max drive, brake force, and max steer. So yeah, max drive is like your maximum torque in Newton meters. Your brake force is like your brake torque essentially in Newton meters. So that should be more than your max drive. So that way you can apply enough force to like stop the vehicle. And then max steer is like in degrees. It's the angle, the max steering, like the maximum degrees your wheels can turn. So if like you're an off-roading vehicle, you'll have like wider turns. If you're a sports car, you'll have like something maybe closer to 25 degrees.
That makes sense.
So you can change that. So the other, like in terms of the speed, like how you alter the speed of the vehicle, one is having the max torque, and then the other is if we look at the wheel colliders, it's changing like various properties in regards to like the friction and things like that on the wheels. So like how much essentially I didn't add this in the docs because it's more on like the unit. This is because the docs are more like how to set it up in Spatial. But if you look at other like specific like Unity vehicle or wheel collider tutorials, it'll go through how the different properties for a wheel collider basically affect the vehicle. So there's those different things to consider. I saw David over on YouTube is asking how the driving controls map to the keyboard or quest controls. Well, I'm glad you asked that because I think we're about to get right into it.
Yeah, so at least let's see, the next part was the script machine. So that's actually the whole brain around what actually controls the vehicle, and that's the part why we wouldn't be able to drive this yet. But the fun part's coming. So we got to go back to at least, well, let's actually go ahead and just add a blank script machine. So we added a script machine. We don't have a script yet. But you see we have the golf cart script here. You can, I mean, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. I think we can either, let's just do it the way that the instructions say. I'm gonna go back here. I'm just gonna create a new, and since I'm just playing with this, I'm gonna call it Hoverboard 2. And I think that's saved into my assets folder there. Yep. And it's gonna be blank for now. We open it up, you'll see that it's just got, I think a couple of us at the on, it's like an on load or something, like when we first load into the scene type of node, and like another one. Here we go. So it's on start and then on update. So I actually don't need either one of those. I'll delete that and close this. So I'm gonna go back to our golf cart. If you look in the inspector on its script machine, you'll see that it's referencing a golf cart script. You can click that and it'll take you right to it. And you can open it up and you'll see this is the entire script for vehicles. Now we'll hit Control A. That's actually going to select everything. And we'll hit Control C to copy. I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to open back our hoverboard script. Again, I'm going to go to the script machine and click it. It's going to take us right to it. I'm going to open it up and hit Control V, or just right click and paste. And that's going to paste the entire script here on our new hoverboard script. So now we can actually edit this and do whatever we want with it, and it will stay independent of the example here. We already added, or no, we needed to add a synced object component. We hadn't done that yet. So I'm gonna go.
And the golf cart there.
That's a golf cart. Yeah. Let's see. There we go. Sorry. Sync object. And I know we need to add synced variables. And on this one, I don't think I have to look. We want the drive, steer, brake, and is honking, right?
And one more, the second from the top. Yeah, that one.
Is controlled.
Yeah, I can never actually remember if it's is controlled or is controlled locally, but it's that one.
Well, let's take a look so that way we're not making assumptions there. So I'm going to go back to the example golf cart script.
Well, I know it's the
yeah.
second one from. I know it's the second one from the top. I just can never remember if.
Oh, which one? Oh, yeah.
It's the is controlled. I'm pretty sure it's the is controlled. So basically,
You're right.
the synced object component is just it's part of like our multiplayer like netcode stack. So as things change, like as these variables change, like as Josh, he's driving his vehicle around and he changes the input there, that data is syncing across everyone else who's in that space at the same time. So they all see him moving the same speed or hear the horn honking or all those things. It's basically allowing that to sync across. So if you didn't add that, you wouldn't see him moving around or hear the horn honking when using that vehicle.
So I think I'm ready to go. You know what? My model's not even skinned. That's another thing that's kind of embarrassing. So I can, let's see, where's my hoverboard? I got a skin for this, so I could just make that look less ugly for now. What? There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
The only other thing is, depending on, we're going to test this out in the sandbox, is making sure either you have a floor underneath it or we can test out just the vehicle like on its own as a prefab object. It's probably just easier just to just put like a plane underneath it so it doesn't fall to the.
Oh yeah, that's very true. And I think you have to add. Well, if it's a space, you have to add all that other stuff. But if it's a prefab, I don't think you have to.
Right. If it's a prefab, yeah. If it's just a prefab object, yeah, then we can test just that object. But yeah, if it's a space, you'll need an entrance point and a thumbnail camera as the only things you should need.
Here's what we'll do. I'll just make a new prefab and throw that. I'll have to add the prefab object component to it.
Yeah.
So if you're at home, you don't have to do this. This is just something you can do if you want to drop it into somebody else's space to create a prefab of it. But I've already done that, and so actually I needed to add it to the prefab, didn't I? I added it to the one in my scene.
There you go.
So now I should be able to drop that right in there, and then we can
make sure. Is that your active package is the prefab? Okay, yeah. I'm just making sure your active package is a prefab object. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that should be it. So we could test it if we want. Let's take a look. Oh, it's making me save this scene. I guess so.
Probably good practice.
All right. I hope I didn't get embarrassed here and then this thing doesn't work in front of everybody or I fall over or something. It's definitely going to have me sitting on it because we haven't updated to the standing animation yet, but we'll at least get it driving first and then we'll do the next part.
That'll be the cherry on top.
And that's actually something that I had to play around with a little bit to get working properly because it's not exactly the most elegant way of doing it because unlike with walking or things that would easily be you could just say I'm going to loop this in Unity and as you walk it's going to loop it for you. In this case, since it's more of like a pose, when you animate it, it only animates it for as long as as the animation is good for. So you have to sort of make it a little longer than it's supposed to be. So obviously I'm sitting on it. I'm not supposed to be sitting on it, but you can see that, that fell over too.
You're riding it like a broom or something.
Yeah, so that
Harry Potter broomstick.
play around with was all of the different weights and the width of the vehicle and all. And so instead of wasting a lot of time playing with it again, I'm actually just going to replace. I mean, obviously it drives, so that's all the correct things. But I'm going to replace it with the prefab that I already built and show a shortcut on how to make one of these really quickly. So I got rid of that one, and I'm going to show you a shortcut how to build one. A very much faster way, and it definitely works. So I'm going to take the example, which is the golf cart here. I'm going to throw it in my scene real quick. People are going to hate us for this when I show you how easy this is. You right click, go to the prefab, unpack, and then now I have my uh, hoverboard model wherever I decide to put it. There it is. And so here it is. I'm going to just toss it into the scene as well. I do think I am going to end up having to rotate it no matter what. But I'm just going to replace this model by putting it underneath the golf cart, and then I'm going to delete the model of the golf cart. And so now, even though it says golf cart, I can rename this to hoverboard. And so it's got all of the components that the golf cart had, except I replaced the model, and I'm done with it. It's that easy.
Well, I think the one thing you're missing is the
Yeah,
wheel
that's right.
visuals. So
Yeah, that's true. So
you can just add
still
those
have
as
to do
empty
that.
objects, but
Still have to do that. So I'm gonna create four like we did before, and just Control D. Right there we go. Front left, front right, back left, back right, and you still have to go into it and reassign those. So everything else is going to be good, but we're just going to drop those in there. And you'll see that I'm even doing it, I can compare this time, I'm doing it in the same order as my wheel colliders. And so that would work as a regular vehicle as well, if they were real meshes there. And so this could actually work. I'm going to actually just drop that in here as a new prefab, and then again, I forgot to add the prefab object, and I can just replace that right in there. And actually, you know what? I'm not going to embarrass myself by not having a skin.
gotta have that dope skin, that retro
Yeah.
vibe.
I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it to myself. All right. So this time, hopefully, it won't fall over so badly. I think the example of the cart actually has all of um, the configuration needed for the hoverboard to kind of work well enough, at least for a video.
And fun fact that the spatial person who worked on implementing drivable vehicles and built the golf cart example is also Josh. So there's something about Josh and vehicles and Unity at Spatial. So, but
So yeah,
there
I'm
you
like
go.
totally sitting in the wrong spot because it thinks it's a golf cart, but that's the part that we got to go in and fix, right? So at least we're at that point now. So I'm going to get out of here. All right, so now the last thing that we have to do is make sure that, of course, we have an animation for the standing part, and that it's lined up properly. And so instead of wasting a lot of time trying to figure that part out, I've already got it built, and I'm just going to put it in here for us, so I can show you how I did it. And so it was this first hoverboard prefab. I'm gonna stick that back in there. Just gonna unpack it for now and then find it. There we go. So what I did in order to make this work is I first had to go into the script, and it's here. And you'll see that underneath the entering and exit vehicle interactables, there's a on interact event for the enter, and there's also one for the exit. And so we'll go into, I'm sorry, it's subgraphs. Let me go back one so I can properly tell people. It's right after the interact. So the subgraph for enter vehicle and exit vehicle is what we're going to be looking at. So if you go in here, you'll see how in the beginning it looked like this. And so let me get rid of that one too there. In the beginning, it looked like this, where it just had input, sit down, and then the rest of the script. What I did was I hijacked it with a animation by just going from input to the animation and then output of the animation to the sit down. And so what that's going to do is have this animation play instead of the sitting. And so what this animation actually is, and you'll see the SKU for that. Jake, I think I might can just share the SKUs with everyone, right? And they can just use it instead of having to make their own.
I
Wouldn't that
believe
work?
yeah, you should be able to do that. I know we started to work on like a shared database for SKUs too.
Sure. I mean, I could put it in the
Uh,
chat or whatever we need to, but instead of everyone having to make their own, I could just share this. It's already working. Um, but if you had to, essentially what you would do is we make a custom avatar emote for just this long animation of standing on top of the hoverboard, and so that we don't have to do that tonight, and you don't have to do that at home. I can actually just share this SKU. I can put it in the chat for anybody interested. That's something that it'll allow me to do here. You might get a yeah, one of those. Where do I type this in at, or can I?
you may not be able to. If you want to send it to me in the private chat, I can drop it in the.
I will.
Drop it in the chat.
There you go.
Cool.
Share that with everybody for me.
You
And
got
so
it.
everybody working at home, you don't have to build your own animation for this. That SKU will give you a very long animation for standing on your hoverboard. And then the only other thing that you'll need to do to edit this to work properly is you'll also want to do something when you exit the vehicle so that it won't continue to do that animation. For me, if you want to be cool like me, I like to do a dab when I jump off, and so I'll share that SKU with you as well. But you'll do the same thing by just hijacking the output or the input and output for the uh, you know uh, exit vehicle portion of this script, and so I'm showing you how to do that there. So I'm going to copy that SKU, close that. I'm going to go back to the chat and give that to you as well. There you go. And so again, for everybody at home, that is the two SKUs for the hoverboard standing animation and also for the dab. And you can actually use that for anything in your worlds if you just want to have people throwing a dab up. So that's kind of my move. And then so look, I'm gonna actually just test this one because I believe that's the. Well, I don't know if I actually put my hoverboard in there or not. If I didn't, I'll replace it. And I'll just show you how that works really quickly. No, I sure didn't. So let's put the right one there. Let's close the sandbox. And so while this is loading up, I'm just going to recap real quick. Easiest way to do this is just replace the model in the example. Make sure you make your fake wheels either way. Since we don't see them, it's not terribly important where they're positioned. The wheel colliders are, but if you're using the example, then you shouldn't have to worry about that. And then you just want to insert your standing animation inside the script in order to make it look like he's standing on the hoverboard. That's really the only part that was kind of tricky. So you'll see, I think I ran into that invisible wall there, but you'll see now that I actually have the animation inserted into the interactive for when I jump on it, it looks like I'm standing on top of the hoverboard, but I'm still able to drive it with the WASD keys just like a vehicle. And if I exit, dismount, pull down, and then I'm back to walking.
Woo! Standing ovation. Got a dab.
I can even beep like.
There we go.
So I hope that was helpful. And I'm certainly willing to take questions or anything like that on the side for anybody that needs help going forward. If it's a couple of days later in the Discord or something like that, it's a very easy thing to do.
Yeah, I think there was a question. How did you
Sure.
get the animation?
Sure. So that's where we can talk about Mixamo. It's a super free website, super cool. Let's take a look at that. Do you want to drive this time, Jake, or do you want me to do it?
No, keep going. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again. Sorry, I'm going to go to entire, and I'm just going to pull up the website real quick. And I'm probably going to expose my email here, but I'm okay if people send me messages. That's fine. So, all right, now what's cool about Mixamo is it's absolutely free. You don't need anything more than just an account with Adobe in order to take advantage of this cool stuff. So, of course, for the hoverboard, I was actually just looking for like a skateboard animation, so I typed in skateboard. There's a couple different ones that we can grab, but this is the one that I used in particular. Don't mind the Bowser that I was making the other day. But you can get tons of animations for here. That's the one that I got. And in order to get it, all you have to do is hit download here. You can do it with or without the skin, and it'll give you an FBX file that once you download and put it into your project, it'll look something like this. And so when you have the model with the animation is just the little triangle looking part, and you can hit Control D to duplicate it out of the model and into your project so that you can in my case, I had to loop it. So, well, it's not really a loop. Let me actually fix that. So, what I had to do was I had to actually open up the animation here, and these are all of the keys. I know we didn't really want to get into this tonight,
Ooh.
Jake, but just as a quick thing, if you already know what you're doing with this, all I did was I just selected all of the keyframes in the animation and I pasted it over and over and over. So it just, I probably did it about 10 times or something like that, so that it would play long enough for anybody riding the hoverboard. But I stopped it when we got off, so it's not a problem if it's too long. You're going to interrupt it when you get off anyway. So for now, unless there's a more elegant way of us adding animations to the vehicle sitting position, that's just what I came up with. It's a little bit of theatrics and
No,
but
that works. That works. The only other thing I would change is you could do with the animation itself could be I believe the animation itself could be just looped versus
okay.
like having to copy it like 10 times.
I hope.
So
Well, if there's a way we can do that, I would totally let's do it right now if you know how to do it. Because I I didn't spend too much time looking into that. I could totally be wrong.
yeah,
It works
if
for
you
my
bring
video.
up yeah, if you click on the animation file for the standing and go into the inspector, you don't even have to go into this, and click on whichever the animation,
I think it was
like
this
just
one.
the yeah, it was just the root. So like the actual like animation, yeah, just click it once and go to the inspector, and then yeah, so you see at the top there's loop time. So if you click edit in the top right,
Hmm.
and then where did it go? Yeah, loop
Well, this
time at the
is
top.
Here we
Click
go.
that, and then scroll down and click apply. So now it'll just loop
Well,
once
the
you start it.
problem the problem that I had, and it may work. Let's try it out. I felt like I tried this and it did it, but it didn't loop. Like it just went back to him sitting. And so I could be wrong. Maybe I did something wrong. I ended up having to do it that way. But if we want to try it out, I think the only thing I have to do,
It depends how we're playing. I guess that animation. I have to look
and
at
that's
the.
that's I don't want to get too much in the weeds of it because it could be either way, and I don't want to confuse people. I'll certainly look into it though, because if it's an easier or better way to do it, I would have rather done it that way. But the
Yeah.
other thing, and we won't get into that, but I had that second animation for the kick. And so if
Mm,
somebody braver than me wants to go in there and play around with that script a little bit more to add the kick on accelerate, that'd be pro.
mm.
Um, but I'm not going to do that tonight.
No,
Yeah.
that's
Did
awesome.
that answer
That's
the
awesome.
question though? I want to make sure we're addressing all that.
I think so. I'll wait to see if there's a follow up comment there, but Yeah, Mixamo is such an awesome tool, and it's totally free. Like, it's not, you don't need like an Adobe subscription to use it. You just need an
Right.
Adobe account, and you can. There's so many. I think there's like got to be like I think hundreds of animations, and they even have their own. If you're looking for avatars, like you want like a custom avatar model, there's like dozens of custom avatar models like in there too that you can use that are really cool. And then you can combine them too, so you can have the avatar and you can have it with an animation or
That's right.
download them separately. So it's a good resource for both if you're looking for some free avatars.
Yeah,
So
certainly. The animations have been going crazy with tons of people like, hey, how are you swimming? How are you spinning? How are you dabbing? And all this stuff. Like
yeah,
most of this stuff is free on Mixamo. And if you once you start realizing that everything you see there you can bring right into spatial with, and I've got videos for that. We don't have to go over that tonight, but if you want to learn a little bit more about how to, bring that stuff into spatial for it takes this much time and no money. So
yeah,
it's perfect.
the best. That's the best thing. It's free. So yeah, the only other thing, if for I was actually just making a video for this today. We'll probably put out maybe tomorrow or Friday. Is if you wanted to do like a totally custom animation, if you're like a dancer, or maybe there isn't the animation that you want, and you can like act it out yourself. There's this tool. There's a couple of them, but the one we'll highlight in the video is Move.ai. So all you need is like at minimum like two iPhones. You can potentially use like some webcams too. You set them up like facing you, and it's like a suitless mocap. So you can just like have the iPhones pointing at you, do whatever movement you want to do, and then you can export that as an FBX and bring it into Unity, and then bring that into Spatial. So if you got two iPhones, it's I haven't gone through the whole process myself, but I've seen other people that done it. It's pretty sweet.
So I do have some. They're not new or anything, but I've worked in IT for a while, so there's plenty of opportunities for when we were replace devices and stuff for us to get old ones and stuff like that. So I've got my hands on a few older iPhone devices, and I successfully used one as a motion capture for. It worked with like VR chat and stuff like that. It's barely usable, but it worked, and so
Yeah,
that's where I grabbed them for that. And now that you've mentioned that, that's given me just I don't
there's
know
a
that like I don't have any moves well enough for like I'm not a dancer, so if
you're
I
not. I
made
mean, you're not doing the dabs in real life and stuff like there. There it is.
so I try, but like I don't know that there it would be horrible for me to try to motion capture any kind of dance moves that I've got going on and putting them in the game. But
Yeah,
just the idea of it is very tempting. I may end up
yeah.
doing it.
Even if it's like it could be like a simple thing. Like I feel like I haven't. Maybe there is in Mixamo, but like just like it could be simple, just like you driving a car. Just like plop yourself in a chair and just
Yeah,
like go like this, and it can capture that. Just like a simple
that's
car
true because
driving
they don't
motion.
have that. I looked. I
Yeah.
specifically looked for that, and they didn't have that. So yeah, maybe I'll just make one and then share it with the community.
Yeah, I think you can use anything for Move.ai. Could be anything. I think iPhone 8 and above. So like you can use some older phones. It doesn't have to be like a super recent
Oh,
one.
okay. I think I have some of those. We're gonna do that.
All right, let's do it.
Wow, look, I've been missing out on all this chat here because I've been looking at my own screen. Sorry, guys.
uh, no, I've been answering them, so you're good.
Okay.
You're good. I think we'll do like another question or two, and then we'll call it a night. But
Okay.
Anna is asking, when you create a world, how are you guys working out the mesh vertices with complex models? Like I think is that question like how do we know or how are we optimizing? I guess the question is more like how do we optimize vertices and complex models? I don't know if and then okay, I'll ask her follow up question afterwards. But did you? I have a thought there. I don't know if you wanted to leave it
Sure. I
to you,
mean, no,
Josh.
you
If you
can
had,
you can have that one. I did touch up a little bit on optimization on one of my early videos. But that's definitely a complex question that it could be easy or it could be in depth, and depending on the model you're talking about, there could be a whole lot of steps, or it could be something simple. Um,
yeah, with vertice count, like we show you that in the scene vitals in Unity. That's something the Spatial Toolkit like provides. So for vertices, I mean, most of the time I would bring the model like into Blender, and then you can use the decimate modifier to essentially like reduce the vertex count. It depends how complicated your model is. She's saying the ones I'm creating are very simple, but they are 400,000. Yeah, so I mean, if they're simple models but they have a high vertex count, then I would bring that into Blender and use the decimate modifier and try and bring that down, because the two things that definitely hurt. I mean, there's many things, but like definitely two of the big things that hurt performance the most are like vertex count / like parts in a model. Like you can have like a simple model that has like 100 parts to it. Like that'll just like tank your performance, especially on the Quest. The Oculus Quest is like really bad for handling complex models, and also texture size. So definitely, like a lot of people put like 4K or 8K textures like in their models, which is crazy high. It definitely does not need to be that high. So we definitely recommend less than up to 2K, like 2048 by 2048 for textures. And then just one more question. The recommendation is less than 15,000 vertices per object. I mean, I believe it's up to 5. I don't have the scene vertices open in front of me. I just rely on the scene vitals menu there, but it's per scene, like per object. Doesn't matter so much. It only matters if you're publishing that object as its own individual prefab. If it's part of like an overall scene, then it's really more kind of like the overall scene vitals, which I don't have it open in my Unity in front of me, but it's more than 15,000. I'll say that.
Yeah, and I don't particularly remember. There was like one model I was playing with, I think, for a video, and it was a scene, but it was you had different parts, and your scene vitals won't tell you anything in particular, like which one of your objects is going to be your culprit or anything, and right off the bat. But I think if you deep dive into some of the logs there, if you open up some of that, it'll start to show you like what objects you have that are driving that up. And so what I found was quickly that there was like one set of objects in particular in my scene that was just killing my vitals. And so I just went in there and just removed that object, and I was all in the green. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to replace that. And so a lot of time, if you get stuff from Sketchfab or whatever, these models may not be optimized for use in spatial or anything like that, but you don't necessarily have to go decimating everything to heck either. Sometimes you can really look at those logs and see or the console, and see what's your culprit is, and sometimes just fix that and leave everything else alone. You'll be fine. Because I've actually been very impressed with the amount of and this is just me talking here. I actually I extracted some like a city out of another game that was actually, it's an older game, but at the time it was like, you needed a beefy computer to even run this just natively on your computer. And I was able to extract all of that model and all the textures and everything, and then load it up in, in Spatial in a web browser, or even on my phone. I was like, wow, this is, really impressive. What you can kind of get away with, with today's hardware. So.
Yeah, the scene vitals if you go above those, like you can still publish your scene or your object or whatever. It's our recommendations. You just run, since what you're building with the toolkit is going to run in a web browser, and that could be a web browser on any kind of machine, basically everything from like technically like Chromebook to like an M1 Mac, and running on mobile phones, also like a huge range of mobile phones and in VR. Those scene vitals are essentially like our recommendations and best practices to, as best as we can, ensure that your scene will run optimally across all those platforms. And like you said, I've had scenes that have like 8 million vertices, that run just fine. It loads fast and runs super fine in my browser. Also, I'm running an M1 Max, so it's not like the most representative sample, but
Right.
considering how
Right.
fast it loaded and how well it ran, like in Chrome, like it was pretty crazy. The other option I saw someone mention too is you can use LODs or level details.
Yes.
So basically, it's right like when you play a game like Grand Theft Auto, right? Like the closer you get to something, like higher level of detail shows up. So that's another way to optimize. And also consider optimizing, like if you have a high poly or high vertice scene, consider like if you're built a whole space or an environment, are the high poly stuff or like the stuff in the backdrop, if you have like mountains in the backdrop, like those could be optimized. Sometimes you might have something that's super high vertice or super high texture that like most people won't even see. It could be like the mountain in the background or the backside, right? Make sure those are optimized too, because then you're just hurting performance for really no reason.
Right.
So take that into consideration. But yeah, anyway, thanks Josh for walking us through that. And now we're all hoverboard masters. Now we're going to see
Yeah.
hoverboards all over the place in Spatial, I hope.
So no
So
problem. Look, I want to make sure everybody understands because I probably could have done a better job of explaining some of that. But at least on my YouTube channel, if you check it out, I've got a video that I kind of spent a lot of time making sure that it made sense and everything. It wasn't live, you know. So if you need a recap, you can use that video to make any vehicle you want. But for hoverboard specifically, just to recap, you basically just have to make invisible wheels and you're golden. So
the
yeah, that's my little trick.
secret is invisible wheels.
Yeah.
So awesome. So where can people, I put the link to your YouTube at the bottom, but where else can people follow you for more great spatial tutorials and
Yeah,
Unity
sure.
tutorials?
Well, thanks for plugging me there. I've enjoyed Spatial now for a little bit. Originally I had started out on some other platforms, but I found Spatial thanks to some friends of mine sometime last year. And I think that I was looking for a new metaverse home right around the time that you guys had just kind of like unveiled the toolkit to the world. And so you guys have just been moving lightning fast, and I can't even keep up anymore. Life is like hitting me hard, and you guys are just coming out with all kind of. I saw the backpack got released today or something like that. And
Yeah.
like hadn't even had time to like all the way test it, really good before everybody else gets it. So I'm gonna get left in the
We're
dust.
moving, yeah, we're moving like crazy. Yeah, this month too, like just we put out vehicles a few weeks ago. Like this month, like just today, we kind of for developers we have Spatial Studio, so you can manage your assets and make those rewardable. And then there's the backpack, which you'll start to see like as a kind of explorer in Spatial. You won't see that until you actually collect your first item, but we haven't like announced that like widely yet. But yeah, this is kind of the first steps in what's going to be the next phase of Spatial over the next like 2 or 3 months, which is like you've built these spaces and like people have spent time in these spaces. Now both as a creator and an explorer, like you get the opportunity to be like rewarded on both fronts. So more to come on that. But yeah, we're like all gas no brakes with that vehicle pun with the updates. So
Yeah, that's
appreciate you.
awesome.
You've been keeping up with it better than I've been keeping up with it. Your tutorials have always been like ahead of mine. So it's we're grateful for you, man. So
Well, I'm gonna
thank
give you a chance to catch up with me. I've got so much going on right now, and not just with with the metaverse and all. If you've been keeping up with me on Twitter at all, I've got a bunch of chickens I just started raising. So I used to be a chicken farmer, and I'm getting back into that. So I got a little bit of my tech life going on, and I also have a little bit of I'm raising birds on the side. So that's going to take up a little bit of my weekend here in the next couple of weekends. But then after that, I'm going to hit making videos again really hard. So stay tuned.
We need that. We need a chicken coop live stream. I think just like all on, like checking on Josh's chickens and see what
I mean,
they're
I'm
up to.
thinking about doing it. I've been posting videos to my Twitter, and it's funny because I've got this like VR brand, but for some reason my audience also still they like chicken videos. So I've just been posting them. Whatever, man.
Maybe there's some crossover there. We can do an immersive chicken coop experience. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that could be a fun game.
I think my goal is just to teach people to do what you love, man. And so for
Amen.
me, I like video games, but I also love not just raising birds, but I have kids, and I like to. I mean, look, eggs are getting expensive. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I like to
Yeah.
feed my kids good food, and so they eat eggs a lot, and so raising chickens has been sort of a twofold thing for me. It's they're wonderful animals, so it's emotionally, for me it's a good thing. But also being able to feed my children well is something that I don't take that for granted. So it's a good
Love
thing I'm
that.
getting into, and it makes me happy. But also, making video games make me happy, and so I want to teach people like both, like have some equilibrium in your life, do things that make you happy, and chase that dream.
I love it. I love it. Well, cool. Well, Josh, thanks again. Thanks everybody who tuned in for the last hour or so. I'm going to go get on my hoverboard game now too and surf around the metaverse. So appreciate it. Have a good night. And for those who joined us from all over the world, a good morning. It was a late night stream. But yeah, thanks everybody. And we'll see you in the next one. Have a
Thanks,
good one.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.